Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Good evening. This is yet another program, yet another live Facebook video with PSGD. बहुत मजे का मौसम है. I really want to go out and do this live session with all of you out there in rain from Karachi. कराची में ना हम बहुत enjoy करते हैं बारिश को क्योंकि साल में एक दफा ही होती है मानसून में. For people in Islamabad and Lahore, usually काफी बारिश होती रहती है, लेकिन for us it's really exciting. So अभी हो रही थी, लेकिन I had this commitment to do this video with you. Next time, inshallah, when I have my waterproof equipment, we'll do a video out there in Barish. So today, since you've all joined here on Facebook, the topic for today is around something really interesting, close to my heart, for all professionals, for students, for all kinds of listeners, because that part of communication is part of the history, geography, it's the narrative. So today with us, we have a gentleman who's a consultant and trainer for more than a decade for us, 12 years. And currently he is working as a trainer and consultant, especially forte is on communication. So ladies and gentlemen, let's introduce Saad Tariq. How are you, Saad?
Walaikum assalam, first of all, Hasnan. I'm good. I think that's how we should start the conversation by Assalamu alaikum and Walaikum assalam. But you said, how are you? So I just said, मैंने कहा Walaikum assalam मैं खुद ही करता हूँ. So I'm good, Hasnan. आप कैसे हैं?
ठीक ठाक जबरदस्त आप बताएं खैरियत से हैं साथ
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah.
So you're in Islamabad today?
नहीं, I'm in Lahore.
Oh, you're in Lahore. Yes, in Lahore. So how's the weather there?
The weather is okay. It was raining in the morning, but up it's bright and sunny. Yes, it was raining cats and dogs in the morning, but then now it's bright and sunny. We've had like a very, it's been very unpredictable. I think because of monsoon, it's been, it rains at one time and then an hour later, it's like bright and sunny. You'll see the sun out again and it's humid. So yeah, it's interesting to know that yes, we're living in times where the weather is interesting as well. You can't really rely on the weather as well now.
Well, we really had the entire staff here at PSTD is also really excited because it seldom rains in Karachi for the last couple of years. So it was a very heavy downpour. So Saad, where have you worked? What's your experience been? Please tell us a little about yourself.
Okay, so I started trainings. I think I started off with language trainings. It was like around 14 years ago when I started working for a language center, and that was my first experience when it comes to training per se. Usse pehle I was working in the corporate sector for a good 2 years as well. I was working in a call center. Uske baad I moved to when I started working for the language center. That's where I realized that I really enjoy being in front of an audience, and what I really enjoy about it is the intrigue of understanding human behavior and understanding how people think and how they behave and how they work. So what I normally do in my sessions is I keep a keen eye and I'm a keen observer when it comes to how people behave and get to understand why they behave in a certain way. Because I've studied psychology, I have this keen interest in understanding human behavior and how it works, how the human mind works. So I started this around 12 years ago. And then after that, I worked for the language center for a good 4 years. Then after that, I moved on to doing my own thing, branched out into soft skills, did soft skills for a while. Now, currently, what we're doing is we're working on a lot of OD consultancy projects. So I'm currently working, I have my own thing, my own company in Pakistan by the name of Fine Line Consultants. And then I've partnered with an enterprise in the Middle East as well. So what we do is we're doing programs in Pakistan and in the Middle East. And what we specialize in is experiential learning, which is learning through experience. And we've designed and developed these games, tabletop games that we use in our programs to help people develop human skills. And currently, the project that I'm working on, I'm currently based out of the Middle East. I'm working based out of Dubai. And over there, we're working with the government on a project, an OD consultancy project.
Great, great. So Saad, the topic, the conversation, the gupshup today is around storytelling. So why did you choose to talk about storytelling?
Okay, so
Why this
one of the
topic?
yes, one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about storytelling is because you know that we're living in times that are where we're very uncertain about what the future has in store for us and where are we heading with this and how long we'll have to somehow endure this normal that we have come to terms with, where we're not doing what we were doing 6 months ago. Things that we were doing very casually, we're not doing them anymore. So the reason why I wanted to talk about storytelling is because I believe in these troubling times, the only thing that actually helps us get along and go and move forward is this idea of being able to tell good stories, and to be able to be in a position where you can connect with people, not by facts and by what you tell them, or facts and figures or numbers, but by the story that you have to share. Because I believe one of the ways I connect with my audience in any activity or in any session that I do is through a story. And I think when you humanize yourself for your audience, it becomes easier for them to connect to you, because we all have our own stories, and somewhere all our stories are connected with each other.
Yes, yes. So around storytelling, can you please tell us a little from the history of, because the stories that I've been told, uh, from history or from geographically and from historically. Can you please give us a few examples of the things? Why do we remember a few things, and the message that ticks and sticks in the history that we remember? How does that connect with the effectiveness of the story?
Okay, so let's understand it this way. If we talk about a politician, we talk about someone who's a leader. If you have a leader who comes on stage, he's going to come in front of an audience and he's going to start talking about how he's going to bring change, or how he is the best person to lead us, and he's going to be someone who's going to inspire us. We might we might listen to numbers, and we might be able to talk about, we might understand that this person makes sense by what he says with the numbers and the facts and the solutions that he has in place for us. But how is it we'll actually connect with him is by making sure that we understand that he's as human as we are. And how do we understand that? Is when the person will share stories. So if a leader comes on stage and talks about how he had to go through an entire journey to come to a point where he realizes that this is important for us, and he shares that journey with us, you'll see that people will connect more with the journey than with the conclusion of where this journey is heading. So people are worried about the results, but what they're more worried about, or what really matters and what really people would value, is the journey of how we get to the result. And that is what we usually do in our programs as well. When I say experiential learning, or I talk about experience based learning, it's not about the result that you get out of it. It's about the experience of how you get there. And if a storyteller or someone who's a leader and wants to inspire someone cannot share a story, cannot somehow relate a story or share a story with his audience that people will relate to, and they'll say, yes, I understand where this person's coming from. I've been through something similar as well. It will never connect. The best way to connect with an audience is to actually share your story and be more open to people. And the reason why we're talking about storytelling for a change is because I know we talk about a lot of things these days when it comes to the pandemic, about what our government is doing, about what the developed countries are doing, and all of that. We talk about when is it that we'll get to the new normal. What we really need to start doing is we really need to start telling it in a story, so that people can see that, yes, we've all gone through this, we're all going through this together, and eventually, inshallah, one day we'll all get out of this as well, and we'll get out of this as better people.
Yes, exactly. I agree. I remember this one quote that I read somewhere. It was really still there in my mind. Is stories are what, um, something like, but which bring people together. So if you want to send a message across, you can't just make a statement. You have to create a narrative around it. So narrative building, it's important for business leaders. It's important for team leaders. It's important for parents also. Do you agree with that?
Well, yes, I think, see, why is it that we tell stories? As you've mentioned, we tell stories so that, one, we can connect, two, we can have, our message can have more meaning, and three is that we can be remembered. Because you would agree to this, that all these people that you talk about, geographically or historically, you're talking about, let's say if we talk about our own history, we talk about the reason why we remember, the reason why we keep quoting Allama Iqbal is because he was an amazing storyteller, right? He would say something which would be one liner, and in one liner you'll have so much depth, and there'll be so many different perspectives that people could take away from it. It's only because he was someone who had the vision. How do people align to a vision? Is by when they can relate to that vision. And when do they relate to that vision? Is when this person who has this vision is talking about a story, or is narrating a story with it.
Yes, just an example that popped into my mind. Um, who was the scientist of whose story that we've been told, the tree and the apple falling down?
Newton.
It's the gravity, Sir Isaac Newton. So yes, I agree with you. What advice would you want to give to the leaders, business leaders, and people who are politicians and people who have a message? What advice would you give them in order for like exact steps for them to translate their messages and what they have in their mind, the vision into a story?
I think before we get to that point where we will start giving away tips, or I say that, you know what, this is what leaders should do, I think the importance of, and I think the importance of understanding why a story is important and the effectiveness of it, the first question we should ask ourselves is, do we really need to share stories? And what happens when we share a story? And how good a story should be? Do you think the story should have a lot of specifics? Or it should have something which is a cliffhanger? Or it should be something where there's always a question that is being answered with that story? I think that's what we need to know first. But when you talk about an advice to all these people, because I believe we all know our circumstances really well and we know them better than anyone else. And in a situation where we're talking to someone or we're expressing our ideas or we're sharing our ideas or we're sharing a vision, it comes down to how important do we think it is for the other person to relate to that specific part of the vision that we're talking about. So let's just make it very easy. If I talk about stories, as I said, in my programs, what I usually do is, how do I help people connect to my programs is by sharing a story of telling them where I've come from. And I think we've had this discussion before as well, where we talked about how we like listening to success stories. We like listening to people talking about where they were and where they've come, where they started from and where they've come to. And I think the reason why we like that is because it somehow gives us this courage that we can do the same as well. So if I tell you that, you know what, I am someone who's been through a lot and I ended over there, you'll be like, okay, everyone has been through a lot. Why is it so special for you? But if I then share a story with you, something that has happened to me during this journey, something that part of it you might have gone through as well, what will happen is you will relate more with that and you'll relate to that part of the conversation more than anything else. Why? Because you would say that it's something that works for you, something that you can connect to as well. So I think it's more about the journey itself, and within that journey is a story. And the best way to actually talk about your journey is share a story. So, like, I'll give you a story, right? I think this story would help make it much easier for people to connect to how stories can really work. Now,
Yes.
let me ask this question to. I know we have a live audience and we have you as well. I know they'll only comment, but you can answer, right? Let me ask you this question: what's the worst that can happen to you on the first day at work?
I don't know, people maybe they're cold shouldered, they're not talking to you, you're not getting their response, they're not welcoming. I mean, that's something that I can think of.
Okay, let me tell you about a story. What happened to me on my first day at the language center? So I started teaching over there. The idea was that I wanted to be in a classroom setting. I really enjoyed doing that. So I was like, let me try doing something which I believe I'll be good at. And that was, I joined this language center, went through an extensive training for a couple of weeks. And then after that, it was my first. It actually came down to the day when it was my first session. And this was a group of 20 professionals. They were actually working during daytime, and in the evenings they would come in for this session, which would be an hour and a half long. And they would work on their basics. They would work on how to deal with people in social situations. Now I walk into this room, 20 professionals, all have had their share of experience. It was a level 2 session, right? So I walk into a room all excited that, you know what, this is going to be my first session and I'm going to just nail it. I'm going to go there. I'm going to leave an impression. People will remember me for ages. I
Yeah.
walk and I say, hello, everyone. My name is Saad Tariq. I'm going to be your instructor for this level. And I'm going to be your instructor and I'm going to be here for you. So this is how I start. I say, hello, everyone. My name is Saad bin Tariq. I'm going to be your instructor for level 2. Imagine what's the worst that can happen. Because the worst happened to me on day 1. What's the worst that can happen? You said cold shoulder. You said people wouldn't take me seriously. They will just shrug their shoulders. They're like, whatever.
For a classroom, the worst that can happen with a teacher, instructor is probably they're not responding to you. or
Okay.
maybe, yeah.
Okay. And I'm pretty sure I would really want the audience to be involved in this as well, and people who are listening, people who are watching us right now, if they would want to share, what's the worst that can happen to you on the first day at work? So this is what happened, right? As soon as I tell them, my name is Saad bin Tariq, I'm going to be your instructor, everybody, each and every one of them, stood up and they walked out. They just
Really?
walked out of the room. They walked out of the room. They went to the site manager, whoever the site manager was at that time, and they told them they do not want me to be their instructor because they were very happy with the instructor before me, the one who was their instructor in level 1. They're like, we don't want this person. We want our old instructor back. Now, when everybody started walking out, I was shocked. I was like, how do I respond to this? I had no idea how to respond to it, and it was a situation that I've never been in before. I was not ready for it. Then what I did was, and the reason why I would want to share the story is because I once again would really want the audience to tell us what would have happened to them on the first day at work, the worst that could happen to them. Now that's how I started my journey as a trainer. And then after that, it just kept getting better and better. I got more comfortable. And what really happened after that was I didn't teach them for level 2. So they abandoned me, right? I couldn't be their instructor. We got a different instructor for them. He was actually, he conducted that session for 2 months because every level was around 2 months long. When that ended, level 3, I made a promise to myself that in level 3, I am going to be their instructor and I'll do better than what I did in the first time. And I kept going back to that time where how is it that I could have controlled the situation back then? I thought of many different ways. And then when I started level 3 with them, I started by telling them, you know what, hello everyone, you all know what my name is. I'm not going to tell you my name again. No one's walking out of this room because I'm going to lock the door. So I locked the door. I told them that you're not going to walk away without giving me a chance. I want you to attend this session. If you don't like what I have to offer, then you can go ahead and you can tell the site manager, I will not ask you to be in my session ever again. What happened was they really enjoyed that session. They gave me an opportunity. I taught them level 3, level 4, level 5, and level 6. And after level 6, I told them before I left that, you know, and at the end of level 3, they apologized. They were like, we're really sorry for the fact that we put you in that situation. And I said, you know what, you don't really need to apologize. The only thing I would want you to do is from here on, whenever you are in a situation like this, please give the other person an opportunity. Now, when I share a story like this, what happens is that everyone who's gone through anything similar, right, will relate. They'll be able to relate to that. They'll somehow be connected to it. And they'll know that, yes, we've gone through something similar as well. We can get out of it as well. We have our own success stories as well. So when I say storytelling for a change, or the reason why we want to do this program is because we right now are in a fix with the situation that we're in. Everybody's going through something. How is it we'll get out of it? Is by making sure that we have a success story to tell those who follow us. Like after this, whatever happens, we have a story to share with people. If I would have wanted to, I would have actually just ended it right there and then I wouldn't have continued trainings. But I did because I knew that, yes, what's the worst that can happen after this?
For our teams also here, I think it's really important to have that context, communicate the context with your teams, tell them why the kind of situation that you're stuck in and the entire background, make a present it like a story, and then that's the only reason why people will get along with you. So, Saad, thank you so much for that. Moving forward. Can you tell us what models and tools do you recommend for an individual to develop a story? Because how do I make my communication effective?
I think when it comes to storytelling, the one thing that you need to understand is, first of all, you need to know how is it you'll be presenting it to an audience, whether you want to present it with all the specifics, with some details. And I think there's a tool that we can use for it. It's called the 3-act structure of effective storytelling, in which you can have 3 basic components of what a story should have. I will be sharing it with you on a slide as well in a bit, but right now what I can do is I can just tell you what the 3 are so it becomes easier for you and the audience to understand and maybe relate to it, because I'm pretty sure most of you would have heard of this before as well. So I think what it starts off with is a situation. what the situation is. Because initially, whenever we're sharing a story, we're always building a backstory, or we're building a scene that this is what's happening, this is what happened, this is how it started, this is what happens next. And then every situation needs to have, because if a story is smooth, if the situation is narrated the way it is narrated and it goes the way it goes, unless there is a complication or an obstacle in it, people won't be hooked to it. The reason what hooks people to a story is the complication, the fact that yes, someone's going to get out of it and someone is going to be a winner at the end of it, or someone's going to succeed. I think the complication is the most important part, because if we have a story that goes on and it's at one pace and it just keeps going and there is nothing, that there's no twist to it, there is no twist and turns, nothing that makes it intriguing for the audience to know what happens next, it will always fail. So there's a complication, and then at the end of it, there is what you call the outcome of it. What is it that you were able to get out of it? So I think all three are very important, and if you have these three acts within your story, I think you will be in a situation where your story will make sense and it will all gel together. So if, let's say, the situation, like if I take my example of the story that I shared with you right now. So what was the situation? The situation was that I started something new, and this was my first time I was doing it, and I was not very comfortable with it, and I was very excited about it. The complication was that they didn't take me seriously, right? And I came across, what happened to me was something which was completely unexpected. I didn't know how to tackle it. I didn't know how to cope with it, how to respond to it. And the outcome was that I took whatever happened to me and then I made the most of it. I want to believe that I made the most of it, and I think it was a situation where it could have made it was a make and break situation, and I was able to make the most of it, alhamdulillah. And that's why I'm still sitting over here. I'm still doing the same thing that I was doing 12 years back.
Wow, wow. This also makes me think of exactly. So whenever in my interviews, in my conversations with people, when they ask me to introduce myself, I always tell them about my qualification, experience, and where do I belong. I come from a small city in Sindh, and then so on and so forth. But the tools that you just provided and the story and the way the story that you told helped me a lot to build my story also, because I also, Saad, have a really interesting scene that I can share.
Please,
Um,
I'm pretty
there
sure the
was
audience want to know about your scene as well.
my scene, really? Okay. My scene, so I was getting around from my college, School of Business Studies. So I was a student of accounting and finance. I was trying my luck with finance because I really wanted to be a chartered accountant. So I was passing by this corridor of a business executive center in Clifton, Karachi. So I was passing by and I saw this banner on the wall of one of these institutes here in Karachi. It said, "Do you want to be a world-class speaker?" So yeah, I was passing by that banner and I saw a mic in the character's hand, and then I really wanted to go. I got inside. Saad, are you still there? Okay, I'll continue with my story. Saad, can't see you. Yes. Can you hear me, Saad?
Yes, yes, I can hear you.
Great. Okay. So I was passing by this business the corridor, and I saw this banner. It really intrigued me to get in and see and want to know what it is. So found out it was a workshop on public speaking skills, a 45-day long workshop for students and who really want to get into the field of public speaking. Me, being a student of finance, getting into something like public speaking, and I guess what? I joined the classes. I was punctual, was there throughout. The initiative at that time was called the Hyde Park Juniors. So a lot of youngsters were there, the very casual environment, and that's where I realized this is something that's close to my heart. So after attending the program, I really decided to quit finance and get into HR, get into learning and development, and here I am, PhD. So yeah,
Wow.
that's why.
So it just took a banner, right? It took a banner to change the way you looked at what you wanted to do for as a career. That's
Yes.
what it takes. And I think that is one reason. So in this case, the situation was that you were already doing what you were doing, which is finance, and you were happy with it. And you were walking, you were passing by, and you
Yeah,
just happened to look at this banner that said that, you know what, learn public speaking, or well, it said the name, right? It was just the name.
yeah, yeah,
So now the complication over here was that you had to, I think what was the one thing that was missing within the story was the complication bit of it. Where was the complication? If you would have added that element of how it was difficult for you to leave finance and just take a career switch, because it's a shift, right? You're moving from one dynamic to another dynamic altogether. Because whenever we have something which is an adversity, whenever people go through adversity, and they come out of it successful, people will always root for you. And that is how you'll humanize yourself. I think the best way to humanize yourself is to make sure that you've gone through something bad and you were able to come out of it. And that is why every story, and I'm pretty sure we've heard a lot of stories, we watch a lot of movies, and in those movies we have these stories that are being told by different narrators. We always are rooting for the person who's gone through a lot in life, who's down and out, and he's going to get up again. Why? Because we understand where this person's coming from. We see some part of ourselves within that person. And that is what rapport building is. That is what it is, connecting with your audience. And in these times, the one thing that we really need is to connect with people around us in ways that they'll remember. Not the fact that they'll remember us as people or as people who inspired them. They'll remember us as someone who had a story, someone who told us something which worked, and it will work for us as well. Eventually, at the end of the day, everything's going to be fine, or we live a good enough life. Yeah, I think good enough is more than enough for most of us, or for me in this case.
how for me, if you ask me, the classic example of stories, the messages that we get are the movies. I used to watch a lot of movies. These days, we're pretty much busy, but still, there are a few movies that I do not compromise on. I really go and download them and watch them. Uh, what are the outcomes, the learning outcomes in context of storytelling? A few popular movies, if you can share examples.
Okay, so if let's say when you talk about popular movies, because I have a very okay, let's talk about a popular movie. Let's just take. I'm pretty sure everyone would have seen Avengers, right? I'm pretty sure
Yeah,
most of us, people who are watching this, would have seen Avengers. Now, in Avengers, you could see that it took them 21 or 22 movies, I believe it was in total, to come to the conclusion, which was then into a two-part movie, which was Endgame, Infinity Wars, and Endgame. Right? These were the last two parts. And the person who was actually against, the person they were fighting against, was someone who had a story. Like, imagine watching a movie where characters just keep coming in and they have motives, but you don't know why they have that motive because you don't know anything about that character. Imagine you're watching a movie in which a villain comes in or a bad guy comes in. Let's just call him a bad guy and the good guy. A bad guy comes in, he has a motive which is against what the good guy wants. We know the entire story of why the good guy wants what he wants, but we don't know why the bad guy wants and what is his motive behind why he's doing this. Will you connect with the bad guy? Because most of the people, because I was, whenever we watch a movie, what we do is we have a discussion amongst friends, and a lot of my friends, they were like, Thanos made a lot of sense what he said, and there's a lot of fan theory out there that says that people were rooting for Thanos because what he did was right. They thought it was right. Why? Because he had a story behind it, and they actually were very good at telling that story in the movie. That why is it that he wants it, and he feels for it. He feels for what he believes in, whatever his motives were, or whatever he wanted to do with the world, with the snap. It was just what he believed in. So I think it's very important in movies as well, or when we talk about entertainment, you'll always be hooked to a movie in which someone's telling you a very good story. And some basic characteristics of a story would be that there should always be something in it for the viewer, for the person who's listening to it, for the person who's watching it. There always has to be something. And what is that something? Someone coming out of an adverse situation. Because if there is no complication in a movie, or there is no complication in anything that you're watching or you're listening to or you're reading about, it will not be something that keeps you hooked for long.
great, 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 great. So storytellers, we've had Zia Muhyiddin, who's a really good orator. I've always listened to his stories and the way of storytelling. And we have Nasiruddin Shah also. Who else do you think are good storytellers of modern times? Anyone? Influencers? Anyone?
I honestly think Elon Musk is a very good storyteller because he actually has convinced us that we can go to the moon, and going to the moon would be like going to Karachi from Lahore. Yes. Yeah. No, I think it would be easier. It would be more like going from to Islamabad from Lahore. That's what he's made us believe, that traveling to the moon and going to space will be that easy. And it's not because he is very good at what he does. He's actually made us believe in this idea that space or technology is going to take a space traveling is going to become very easy. So I think he's a very good storyteller. And then there are a lot of writers that I have read and people who I've studied and have been inspired by. I think being a good storyteller, the one thing that you need to know is you need to know how is it that you will present that story. And that story needs to have certain characteristics or attributes that are very important within a story. So what we can do is if you can share your screen right now, if I can share my screen, I'll show you some things that I believe are very important when it comes to sharing a story. Let me know, Hasnain, when you can see this on my screen.
Yes, it's there.
Okay, perfect. So, but this is what we normally in a storytelling workshop we cover uh, these 8 aspects of a story, of structure of an effective story. So you see, it starts with the objective. Where is that? Who is my audience? Why am I sharing the story with them? And what would they take away from the story? But in this case, the only one question you need to ask yourself is, who is my audience? Whether I'm talking to people who I need to inspire, whether I'm talking to people who I want to take something away from this session, or why am I actually, what is the audience going to take away from this? Then you come to the hook, which is why should they listen to my story? This is where, if let's say, if I'm talking about the same story, if let's say we take your story as an example, which is why would you want to share your story of how you got into learning and development? The objective is the audience that you're talking to, and the audience you usually talk to are students who are looking for a career, people who
Yeah.
would want to know what is that they can do with their lives, and they're confused about where to go from here. Now, the hook over there is why should they listen to your story? Is because you're someone who's been successful at what you've done. You were able to get somewhere, and you're standing in front of them because you are someone, right? The audience is confused students who have no idea where they're heading, what they want to do with their life. And the why they should listen to your story is because you're someone and you've come somewhere from where you started. And you were just like, you were a student like them, because all of us go through that same journey, right? We start as a student, we then go do internships, then we go to jobs, and then we start our own businesses or become entrepreneurs, we become innovators or visionaries, whatever we become. Then the context. Now, the reason why you're standing over there is because those students need help. And where and when did it take place? The context of that story is also very important. That if,
Yeah.
for example, if you would have said that I was doing my first job, and after having a bad experience in the first job, I thought the second job that I'm going to do, I'm going to listen to my heart. I'm going to make it happen for myself. I'm going to listen to what I actually want to do, and I'll do that. Now, do you think that would relate to an audience of students? It won't. Why? Because you already are not in the same position. You've actually started a job, you are part of the professional setup, and that is where you are in life at that very moment where you're sharing the story, when this story happened to you. If you want to connect to your audience, which is the students in this case, you will say, while I was, as you mentioned, that while you were walking back from your class, right? Or let's say you were going back home after taking your class, you were doing your finance, you were studying finance, and you had your class, you were heading back home, you saw this banner, it really got to you. Now, the when and where it takes place is also very important. The context of why I need to share this story and how the story is really going to link with the hook and the objective. Then you have the challenge, which is important, as I said, that you need to have a problem. Because, see, I decide for myself that I need to be a learning and development professional. I need to be an L&D professional. Now, there has to be something that happens during my journey that makes it difficult, or I had to go through hardships, or I had to go back and forth with something to make it happen for myself. That is what you call the challenge and the conflict. Where what is it was the challenge for you? The challenge for you in this case would have been the fact that you've already started finance. Now, changing careers would have made would have been a difficult option for you. Why? Because you've already invested time in it, and now you'll have to invest that time from scratch again. Like people say that they were in a in an industry, but then they completely switched because they couldn't really make sense of it. So that transition is what the challenge is, and the conflict is, how do you convince people around you that you really want to do this? How do you convince your parents, society, people that you, like your friends, that now you're not doing finance and you're moving towards what you call L&D or HR? The resolution is at the end of it. Because see, this, if you look at this whole structure, what happens is that you'll understand that you can break your story down into smaller chunks. And when those chunks are put together, you have a very good story or an effective story. The resolution, lesson, and recommended actions, they all go hand in hand, with the resolution being, how did it turn out for you? This is how it turned out for you. And at times, you don't really need to tell them how it turned out. They can see the result themselves because you're standing in front of them and you're standing in a certain capacity. And then the lessons, let them take the lessons away, what the lessons that they want to take away from that, let them do it on their own. You don't need to read or spell out the lessons for them. Let them do it on their own. As soon as they have a better understanding of what they're taking away from the, because see, your story or my story, whenever I share my story, people take away different things from the story. Your story, people will take away different things from it as well. Why? Because it's how they perceive that story and where that story fits in their big puzzle. Because see, they have a puzzle going on with their life as well, where they're trying to fit all the pieces in the right place. Your piece or your story is going to somehow fit in as a completely different piece of that puzzle for them. Might not be the same piece of the puzzle that was for you, but for them it will be completely different. Why? Because they will look at it from their perspective. Everybody is going to look at your story from their own lens. From their lens, it might be, they might just take away this idea that you should never back, you should always be firm of a decision that you've made. They could take away that from your story. Not the fact that you can change your career whatever you want, or the fact that you followed your heart. You made a decision and you made sure that you stick to that decision. You didn't change that decision. I think that is what's important, what people take away from it. Now, if I ask you, Hasnain, I want you to tell me, which one do you think is the most important for you in this structure of an effective story? What is the most important thing for you?
I think if you ask me, it's the entire story should be genuine.
Should be genuine, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think that's of utmost importance. I'm sure there are a lot of communication specialists and con artists who just make up stories, but they need to be genuine. Some part of it should be genuine, otherwise it won't create a lasting impact. What do you think?
Okay, so now what you've said is there are two different things. You've said that it should be genuine, somewhat genuine, or some parts of it should be genuine. Now, which one is it? Because if some parts of it are genuine, then yes, you can glorify it, you can somehow add more to it, and you can make it sound as if it was a really bad situation, but it was not that bad, right? That would be, some parts of it should be genuine. I believe, see, honesty, who do we connect to the most? People who we can trust, right? People who we believe are not going to be, I think trust is the most important thing over here, that if you can trust someone, then you will be inspired by them. Then you will have no problems following them as well. Or you will listen to everything that they say and you will agree to it. I'm not saying that we should wholeheartedly trust everyone, but I'm pretty sure there are people out there who we're inspired by. I'm pretty sure everyone who's listening to this, everyone who's watching this, and including you and me, we have people that have inspired us in our lives, right? One way or the other. Now, if we say that they were people who were able to inspire us completely in everything, no, that's not true. Some part of what they said inspired us and helped us in a certain way. And that is what it is all about. And a story is also similar to what we do in life, that we come across so many different people. Everyone inspires us in a different way. Everyone leaves a mark in a different way. We need to piece it all together so that we're able to look at that big puzzle, or this puzzle that we have in front of us, which is our life. So if you ask me, I think, yes, being genuine is very important. But the most important thing that will help people relate to your story and be able to understand that, yes, the story makes sense to them as well, is the hook and the context of it. Because if my hook is not right and the context of the story doesn't make sense, the rest of it can be as good as you want it to be. It can be immaculate, can be the best that anyone has to offer. Unless you have a good hook, and the context makes sense to the people that you're talking to or you're sharing that story with, it will never work out. It will always fall short.
Great, great, great. Saad, we have a question from Mevish.
Uh-huh.
It's a very specific question. The question is, how can storytelling be used with disabled kids?
With
What kind of
disabled
stories we tell them? Yes.
Okay. Now, I don't know if I would want to quote a movie, but let's just not quote a movie. Let's just talk about an example. So, what do you do with disabled kids? How do you communicate with them? There are different means, right? There are different means in which you either will. So, for example, if we're talking about disabled kids, uh, let's just take an example. Let's say kids who can't really speak or they can't hear, deaf and dumb kids. Let's just talk about if we're talking about disabled kids for a certain thing that two of their senses don't really work. They can't speak, they can't listen, they can't hear. How do you tell them a story? You visualize a story for them, right? Which means that you will help them understand. And over there's a hook as well. Why? Because if they're not listening to it, if they're watching your story, why are they watching it? Because they're enjoying it. Two, it is something that will make sense to them. Three, they have gone through something similar. Like I don't know if there's this very interesting movie that I really like. It's in I don't know if you guys have seen it. Have you seen? Are you into Indian movies, Asnan?
Yes, a couple very specific ones like Amir Khan ki movies is what I watch.
Okay, so there's this movie. If you've watched Amir Khan movies, and I'm pretty sure all of us over here have watched it. Most of us would have watched Tare Zameen Par, which was a movie on kids and people who have learning disabilities, right? And that movie focused on how this one student was not involved in studies, was not really fond of studies, but then he found a way to be involved in it, and that was because of a teacher telling a very good story. In that movie, Amir Khan tells him a story about how he's special, and there were so many special people out there who were able to achieve so much more just because people didn't understand them when they were kids. And he actually tells a story. If you watch that movie, you'll see that he tells a story to bring him back to life, or bring him back to start to this idea that he needs to start doing what he likes doing, and he needs to study as well. That's one. And then another movie that I really like, in which there was an amazing story that was told in a very unique way, was Barfi. I don't know if you guys have seen it. If you've seen
I
it,
have, yes.
oh, yes, I think that movie is a wonderful example of how you can share a story that makes sense. And in that as well, there are two people who cannot speak. One cannot speak. One cannot understand things the way we do. They have a disability. Both of them have a disability. They come together and they have a journey. And we, throughout that movie, are rooting for them. We want them to be successful. We want them to get where they want to, and eventually they do. So I think for people with disability or kids with disability, it's about, once again, understanding the objective behind it, who is my audience, and what is the context for them. If we're able to identify these two, then the means that you use can change. You can change them. There can be multiple means. Nowadays, technology helps us communicate with those who are disabled or those who are not physically able like we are. There are so many ways in people do that nowadays.
Useful tools. Very, very useful tools. We, yes. Okay, moving forward. Saad, you've told us your story. You've told us about the stages and characteristics of a storytelling script in these times of COVID. Yes.
There's one more. I think there's a question by Farah. She's asking about, can storytelling be used? Is it an effective way for an icebreaker? As an
Yes.
icebreaker, definitely. I think it would definitely work as an icebreaker, but only when you know that your audience is listening to you. Because see, your story cannot be a long story. It cannot be like the one that I just told you, or the one that Hasnan said. These stories can be a good starter, but unless they connect with you, icebreakers are usually to make them feel comfortable and for them to connect with you. If you are someone who can actually involve an audience with a story, and you can do it in a way that everybody's going to be hooked to it, then yes, go ahead and do it as an icebreaker. It is not bad as an icebreaker. It works for some people. I know a couple of, and I'm pretty sure we can quote some of the really prominent names in our industry. I think Qasim Ali Shah is a very good storyteller. he is very good at the stories that he tells. And then you've got Umair Jaliawala, who connects stories to what he wants you to learn from those stories. So I think if you are someone who has the charisma, I won't just say charisma, it's the whole personality. It's everything that you have to bring to it, which is the way you're saying it, the words that you're using. It's the verbal, the non-verbal, and it is the overall essence of what people are taking away from it as well. So I think for icebreakers, yeah, you could definitely use them.
Great. Thank you so much for such useful information, especially for me. For it's also useful for trainers out there who really need all the tools to engage the audience. For me, for example, for starting the session, you need to really create a hook which has to have an objective of why we're there in a classroom having a program. For that, you really need to break the ice with the audience. I've seen people who start their conversations with a story about themselves, about the institution. For example, our institute, PSTD, 1966 is where we started. Our vision was to become a premium institution in Pakistan. So there's a lots and lots of stories that I listened from senior management here. So thank you so much, Saad. It was a pleasure being with you. Good luck for your future endeavors. So this is the series that sort of program that we do every week on a Friday around in evening 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. Thank you so much for making time for this. It was such a useful information. Um, for all the viewers who are there on live on Facebook right now, if you want to have questions, please comment below because this video will be available on Facebook also, and we'll keep responding to those questions. So that's all from now. Thank you so much, Saad. Have a good
Thank
day.
you so much for
Take
having me,
care.
Hasnan. It was a pleasure. Everyone, take care of yourself.
Allah Hafiz.